Have you ever scrolled through Instagram and seen a poetic line that seems to speak directly to your soul? A quote that makes you pause and reflect, something like, "The wound is the place where the light enters you," or "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." Chances are, that's Rumi, one of the most quoted poets in the modern world, even more than Shakespeare in some circles. But what's fascinating is this. Rumi lived in 13th century Persia, a mystic deeply embedded in Islamic Sufism, yet his words echo across time and cultures, appearing in wellness retreats, self-help books, yoga studios, and even on coffee mugs. Why has a medieval Sufi poet become a spiritual guide for the modern world? And how are his verses being used, and sometimes misused, by today's self-help movement? Let's explore that. Welcome to The Unfolding Journey, the channel where we dive into timeless wisdom, modern consciousness, and the pathways that help us reconnect with our deeper selves. If you're passionate about growth, truth, and the beauty of inner transformation, you've come to the right place. Now, let's journey into the heart of Rumi's poetry and examine its place in today's motivational and spiritual landscape. Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi was born in 1207 in what is now Afghanistan, but he spent most of his life in Konya, present-day Turkey. He was a scholar, theologian, and jurist, until a life-altering encounter with the mystic Shams of Tabriz awakened a deeper spiritual flame within him. That inner fire became the source of over 60,000 verses of poetry, exploring love, divine union, loss, and transformation. Rumi's spiritual path was not about dogma. It was about dissolving the ego, transcending the self, and merging with the beloved, that is, the divine. His poetry is drenched in longing, surrender, and the painful beauty of awakening. Yet today, many of his quotes are posted alongside hashtags like #selflove and #motivationmonday. This raises a compelling question. How has Rumi become a modern-day life coach? To understand how Rumi fits into this, we need to understand the self-help movement itself. Since the late 20th century, the West has seen a massive surge in personal development content, from Tony Robbins seminars to books like The Power of Now and You Are a Badass. At its best, the self-help world helps people take responsibility for their lives, heal trauma, and find purpose. At its worst, it becomes a cycle of consumerism masked as enlightenment. Rumi's poetry has become spiritual currency in this movement, a bridge between the East and West, between mystical truth and modern psychology. Many of Rumi's most quoted lines sound like they belong in a TED Talk or wellness blog. Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. As you start to walk on the way appears. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? These verses resonate because they speak to empowerment, surrender, and transformation, central themes in personal growth. But when we zoom in, we notice that many of these quotes are adapted, shortened, or stripped of their spiritual context. The modern world often presents Rumi as a prophet of positive thinking, but his original context was far more radical. He wasn't just advocating change, he was speaking of spiritual annihilation. The you that transforms in Rumi's work isn't the ego, it's the soul returning to its source. This brings us to a crucial tension. The self-help movement often frames personal growth in terms of achievement, confidence, and self-esteem. Rumi, however, invites us into a much more paradoxical space. Take this line. You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. That's not about feeling better. That's about letting go of everything you think you are. It's about spiritual surrender, not self-optimization. In his mystical worldview, suffering isn't a problem to be fixed. It's the raw material of awakening. Loss, longing, and heartbreak are not detours from the path. They are the path. So when modern platforms reduce his poetry to bumper sticker optimism, they risk missing the essence. It's like using a candle to light a stadium. Beautiful, but insufficient. There's no denying that Rumi's popularity has helped introduce millions to deeper spiritual truths. His poetry can be a gateway, simple on the surface, but infinitely deep if one chooses to explore further. But that popularity comes with a price. Much of what we see in Instagram quotes or on wellness blogs is Rumi light, filtered through Western sensibilities, de-Islamicized, and sometimes inaccurately translated. In fact, many of the most famous Rumi quotes in English are based on versions by 20th century American poet Coleman, who doesn't speak Persian and worked from earlier translations. Barks helped make Rumi accessible, but he also reinterpreted Rumi through a universalist, New Age lens, stripping away the cultural and spiritual specificity. Rumi, after all, was a devout Muslim. His poetry is filled with Quranic references, Sufi metaphors, and praise of the Prophet Muhammad. This dimension is almost entirely absent in his modern usage. It's as if we've taken the fruit but discarded the tree. Despite these distortions, Rumi's work remains psychologically profound. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Rumi could have easily written that. His poetry mirrors the inner journey of individuation, facing the shadow, shedding illusions, and discovering the self beneath the self. For example, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. This isn't just poetic, it's therapeutic. It aligns with modern psychological models like internal family systems and shadow work. So while Rumi isn't a licensed therapist, his metaphors offer emotional and spiritual maps. They invite us to confront our pain, not escape it, to embrace uncertainty, not control it. It's tempting to criticize how the wellness industry uses Rumi's verses, and sometimes that critique is valid. But it's also important to recognize that many people do find real healing and transformation through these simplified quotes. A single line from Rumi might spark someone's curiosity to read the Masnavi or study Sufism. It might inspire reflection, meditation, or deeper inquiry. The problem isn't that Rumi is quoted in yoga classes. It's when he becomes a spiritual vending machine. His work isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about becoming real, raw, and awake to the divine mystery within and around us. So, how can we engage with Rumi's work more consciously? Read full poems, not just quotes. Context matters. Rumi's verses often unfold meaning across multiple lines. Don't just take the highlights. Explore scholarly translations. Look into work by Reynold, Nicholson, A.J. Arberry, or even newer translations by Jawid Mojaddedi, which aim to preserve the spiritual and cultural nuance. Understand the Sufi framework. Rumi's metaphors, like the wine, the tavern, or the beloved, aren't random. They're symbols deeply rooted in Islamic mysticism. Reflect deeply. Rumi's words aren't just to be consumed. They're meant to be digested, lived, and integrated. Despite all the dilution, Rumi's voice continues to cut through the noise. Why? Because he speaks to something timeless. He reminds us that growth is not linear, that the path is through, not around, our wounds. He tells us that divine love isn't something we find out there, but something we awaken to within. His poetry offers a mirror and a lamp, a way to see ourselves clearly and to illuminate the dark corners of our inner world. In a world obsessed with performance, perfection, and productivity, Rumi gives us permission to fall apart, to long, to ache, and to trust that even in our breaking, there is light. So, as you scroll through your feed and encounter a Rumi quote, take a moment. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what is this verse truly asking of me? Not just to feel better, but perhaps to feel deeper. Thank you for watching this episode of The Unfolding Journey, where ancient wisdom meets modern insight. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We're building a community of seekers, thinkers, and soul travelers, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. And remember, don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. Until next time, keep unfolding.